Hey everyone. So by now, hopefully you watched the TED Talk by Sam Harris on how science can inform morality, and it was a provocative video. It was hopefully, I I say this in jest somewhat, but I do hope that it made you a little uncomfortable. I think learning sometimes will make us uncomfortable. It needs to do that in order to stretch us. But he makes some bold claims, and ended up getting a standing ovation at the end of it. So it may seem like, wow, he his perspective, you might have been, I don't know, challenged or maybe persuaded by it, but his perspective has some flaws to it that I thought that in this video I can sort of help you understand and elucidate a little bit more so that you know how to respond to a video like that. Because Sam Harris is what you could potentially call a subscriber to Scientism. Scientism is not being scientific. It's actually the belief that science is the primary and be all and end all of all knowledge. That everything that we understand about the world should be filtered through a scientific lens, and that any scientific finding is ultimately going to trump every other potential belief that we might have. So in that, Sam Harris is arguing against, religious moral convictions. So he gives the example of the veil, and also in terms of Christianity, stances on homosexuality. So it's um, it's challenging, but again, I think that there's ways to deconstruct his argument so that you understand um, that the claims he is making, he doesn't have the ground on which to make them. So first off, scientism is a fallacy from the get-go, because scientism says that science is the ultimate answer to all questions, and that itself is not a scientifically verifiable claim, right? To be able to believe that, um, you would need to, from a scientific perspective, need to observe it, replicate it, watch it multiple times, and say, okay, here is um, this system that will work. So you can't do that, right? You cannot scientifically verify that science can answer all questions. So again, he's relying on logic, which is connected to science, but is different from science, and saying, well, logically, this is the way that we can figure this out. And so he conflates science and reasoning and logic. He claims that once we know enough about the human mind through neuroscience, that we'll be able to understand the way that uh, a veil might have, what effect it might have on a person's self-esteem, and you'd be able to reveal whether enforcement of the veil is an act of love, because you can have neuroscience that could reveal that. And he seems to believe in this sort of optimistic view of science, which, by the way, was a trend that we had, 70 years ago, um, when science was in the at the beginning of the 20th century. People looked to science as like, oh, here it's going to solve all of our problems. But views on science changed radically when World War II came about, because it was this idea that society will just improve and improve, and things will get better and better. But World War II was this example, this poignant example of the world falling apart, people killing each other, in fact, developing weapons that could kill on a mass scale using science. And so people's view of science really was uh, radically altered by the nuclear bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so that people said, wow, science is dangerous. Science does not necessarily lead us to better treatment of one another. Potentially, it develops weapons that can kill. And so I feel like Sam Harris hasn't learned that lesson to say science is a tool, but science needs to be placed within a broader, you know, value system that evaluates the findings of science and weighs it and considers it and places it within, the values, ethics, and norms of a culture. So, in a sense, it's ethnocentrism. Um, so ethnocentrism is this idea that whatever my culture does is correct and right. It's the best way to do it. And certainly, all of us probably feel that to some degree. But ethnocentrism takes it to the next level and says, no, this is truly the absolute, objectively right way to do something. Whether that's, valuing education or not, whether it's valuing, family, whether it's taking a shame-based orientation. We all have our cultural differences. And again, it's okay to have this sense like, oh, this is the way I like it, and this is what feels right to me. But to take that to the next step and say, not only does it feel right, it is right. This is absolutely the right way. That's ethnocentrism. And I think Sam Harris demonstrates ethnocentrism in this idea that he has the capacity to rationally judge all other cultural practices, but his ethnicity, in a sense, is not, connected to a skin color or geographical location, but it's his identity as a scientist that he claims. As a scientist, I have this ultimate capacity for judging all other cultural values. That my culture of science is ultimate, and that it overrides all other cultures. And again, I think that strikes me as extremely prideful. It's it's a remarkable hubris to claim that you can judge with with the evidence available to you, you could judge all other cultures. And I think I think it strikes me that his argument is based on this sort of narcissistic appeal that he's appealing to others as well, claiming, you know what, if you're a scientist, if you embrace science, you can have this power too. And again, that appeals to some people. I think that's why he got a standing ovation. They have things in the presentation that people are that people some people perceive as morally abhorrent. Many people view Christians' views of homosexuality as morally abhorrent, and veiling similarly. So he sort of appeals to them and says, "Wow, you are, one of the in crowd that has this knowledge." And again, I don't think that I think that that's a very dangerous perspective. So again, when we look at science, I don't want you to be entirely skeptical of what science can teach us. I don't want you to just say, "Oh, science, yeah, that's worthless. It's based on secular values." No, I want you to see science as a tool, a valuable tool that can help you understand the world around you, to be able to look at the creation that God has um, uh, in, instilled around you, and be able to understand it better, to understand God's works better, um, but still, so have some faith, but still have a place of skepticism to say, like, this is a worldview that has a number of assumptions layered into it. You know, assumptions that things that the patterns of the world are inherently truthful. That's a assumption of science. And you know, a spiritual view would say no, that there could be some um, realities of the world that are not patterned, that are not replicable, that are unique and dynamic and non-linear. And we could say like there's some things that emerge uniquely. And so it's that faith and skepticism piece again that I hope you have. So again, you can appreciate science, but you don't have to be a science. You don't have to subscribe to scientism. All right. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that reassures you after watching that video by Sam Harris. And would love to know any comments or questions you might have. So feel free to share them. All right. I'll end here. Okay.